Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hello, Catholic pilgrims! It is day 32 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. Today's show is sponsored by My Saint, My Hero. And as you know, it is February 1st and it's the month of love. And on February 14th, hopefully you'll be gifting your loved ones with something special to remind them of how much you love them. And if you're looking for a place, I've got one for you. My Saint, My Hero makes wearable blessings. They've got all kinds of jewelry that showcase our Catholic faith in very tasteful ways. There's something for men, women, and children. Please check out My Saint, My Hero at www.mysaintmyhero.com. Okay, so we have 1 month down, February 1st, and we are on a roll. So yesterday we read kind of a different part from her diary. It's not her typical diary entries that we normally read where she's expressing, her innermost thoughts. It was more like a question and answer of the different vows that religious take. So yesterday we talked about the vow of poverty and what vows are. Today we're going to be going over chastity and obedience. So we are starting from the title of the vow of chastity and ending with number 94. 94 is just really, really small. So we'll go ahead and get started. The vow of chastity. To what does this vow oblige us? To renounce marriage and to avoid everything that is forbidden by the 6th and 9th commandments. Is a fault against the virtue a violation of the vow? Every fault against the virtue is at the same time a violation of the vow, because here there is no difference, as in the case of poverty and obedience, between the vow and the virtue. Is every bad thought a sin? No, every bad thought is not a sin. It becomes so only when the acquiescence of the will and consent are joined to the consideration of the mind. Is there anything over and above sins against chastity which is detrimental to the virtue? Lack of custody of the senses, of the imagination, of the feelings. Familiarity and sentimental friendships are detrimental to the virtue. What are the means by which this virtue may be preserved? To conquer interior temptations with the thought of the presence of God, and moreover to fight without fear, and for external temptations to avoid occasions. There are in all 7 principal means: to guard the senses, to avoid occasions, to avoid idleness, to remove temptations promptly, to remove oneself from all and especially particular friendships, the spirit of mortification, and to reveal all these temptations to one's confessor. Besides this, there are also 5 means of preserving this virtue: humility, a spirit of prayer, modesty of the eyes, fidelity to the rule, a sincere devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. The vow of obedience. The vow of obedience is superior to the first 2. It is, to tell the truth, a holocaust, and it is more necessary because it forms and animates the monastic body. To what does the vow of obedience oblige us? By the vow of obedience, the religious promises to God to be obedient to his legitimate superiors in everything that they will ordain in virtue of the rule. The vow of obedience makes the religious dependent on his superior in virtue of these rules for his whole life and in all his affairs. A religious commits a grave sin against the vow every time he disobeys an order given in virtue of obedience and of these rules. The virtue of obedience. The virtue of obedience goes further than the vow. It embraces the rules, the regulations, and even the counsels of the superiors. Is the virtue of obedience indispensable for a religious? The virtue of obedience is so indispensable to a religious that even if he were to perform good actions contrary to obedience, these would be evil and without merit. Can we sin gravely against the virtue of obedience? We sin gravely when we scorn the authority or the order of the superior, or when spiritual or temporal harm to the community results from our disobedience. What faults endanger the vow? To be prejudiced against the superior, or to harbor an antipathy for him, murmuring and criticism, tardiness and negligence. The degrees of obedience: prompt and complete fulfillment, the obedience of the will when the will persuades the intellect to submit to the advice of the superior. To facilitate obedience, St. Ignatius suggests, moreover, 3 means: always to see God in our superior, whoever he might be; to justify in itself the order or advice of the superior; to accept each order as an order from God without examining it or reflecting on it. General means: humility. Nothing is difficult for the humble. O my Lord, inflame my heart with love for you, that my spirit may not grow weary amidst the storms, the sufferings, and the trials. You see how weak I am. Love can do all. Okay, so again, like I said, these are a little bit different. I know it's maybe a little hard to follow along because it's not, reading her inner thoughts or her conversations with Jesus. But again, these are important things to talk about. Now, with chastity, we are all called to be chaste. We are all called to practice the virtue of chastity in our married lives, in our single lives, and in the religious life. And I think it's something that isn't talked about enough, because when I was growing up, the only thing I ever heard about chastity was jokes about like chastity belts and about these super weird, kooky cults where they would make their daughters wear chastity belts, and it was all just shrouded in this weirdness. And so it was like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. I had never heard the beauty of the virtue of chastity. Nobody ever explained it to me, nothing. And in a way, our society has kind of given up on it, because what do we tell teenagers? Or, what's our message about teenagers? Oh, well, they're going to do it anyway, so, why bother? Just throw them some birth control pills, throw them some condoms, and let them on their way. Nobody ever really explains the beauty of the virtue of chastity. If anybody does, it ends up sounding like a no, 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 instead of a yes, yes, yes. This is what you're saying yes to. You're saying yes to, your future spouse. You're saying yes to your spouse by remaining chaste with only them. All the beautiful, life-giving, wonderful things that the virtue of chastity brings about. Nobody ever really talks about that. Before I came into the Catholic Church, no one had ever mentioned this. And then when I learned about it, I was like, why are we not talking about this more? This is really beautiful and really important. But we just kind of give up on people and don't say anything. At least give people information. At least give people all the information that they can, at their disposal. Tell them about the virtue of chastity. If they don't follow it, then they don't follow it. But at least you've told them and they have that knowledge and that information. That's what drives me crazy, is we just don't even say it because we don't think people will follow it. So anyway, what I really like here is that it gives you 7 principal ways to practice the virtue of chastity. Guard our senses. Avoid occasions of sin. Don't go to strip clubs with your, bachelor or bachelorette parties. To avoid idleness. People can get caught up in pornography and chatting online with people they shouldn't. To remove temptations properly. If you see something, a movie comes on and it's got some very unchaste scenes in it, quickly get away. I have put down many a book because of scenes in the book. So, and I promptly get rid of it. To remove oneself from all and especially particular friendships. What is being referred to here is if me as a married woman was getting a little too cozy with another man, if we're having lunch together or something like that, that would need to stop. I don't think it means friendships, like for me with my girlfriends or something like that. I think it's, friendships that have the potential to move into something else. A spirit of mortification, and to reveal all these temptations to one's confessor. And I really think that, sins against the virtue of chastity are one of the harder ones to tell our confessors because they can tend to be kind of embarrassing. But the more you expose it and get it out, the less power it has over you. So, if that's a sin that you really, really struggle with, tell your confessor. It's not like he's never heard it before. Okay, and so then we have obedience. And in our world, two of the dirtiest words you could ever say is chastity and obedience. I mean, if you throw those words out into the social media atmosphere, you will get slayed and filleted by people laughing at you, ridiculing you, mocking you for even suggesting that those are virtues. And the thing is that, again, as lay people, yes, the religious, they take these as vows. As lay people, we are to be obedient to Christ and his church. And so often we're not obedient. We are looking now at some of our highest leaders in our land who proclaim to be practicing Catholics that are not obedient to the teachings of the church. If I'm not obedient to Christ and his teachings and I choose to follow my own path and I'm saying, no, I know better than Christ, then I'm not really a follower of Christ. And that's kind of hard to hear. We don't want to hear that because then we think, oh, you're excluding people. You think you're better than anybody else. But this is what it is. If you want to follow Christ, you have to be obedient to him and the church that he set up. And that's just the cold, hard facts. And especially in America, we see obedience as such a bad thing. I'm not obedient to anybody. I'm my own person. I do things my own way. But what chastity and obedience teach is discipline. And we are so lacking in discipline in our world. Because to be chaste and to guard your senses, to promptly remove things, to, be on your guard so that you don't slip into a sin is to be disciplined. Because the world will offer you a million choices and opportunities to sin against the virtue of chastity. And with obedience, it's being disciplined to recognize that Christ, his will should be number one in our life. And even if it's hard, even if it goes contrary to what most of the country believes or what the world believes, we are still called to be obedient. And that can be very difficult, but it makes us very disciplined. So they're not dirty words. It's just our culture has made them dirty words because people don't want to follow them or try to practice these virtues. So all of us are going to mess up at some point, with the virtues of chastity and obedience. And I think what she says here down at the bottom, her short little prayer, "Oh my Lord, inflame my heart with love for you, that my spirit may not grow weary amidst the storms, the sufferings, and the trials." That's a beautiful prayer and one that can, help us stand strong in the virtues of chastity and obedience. If we love God fully, sincerely, and totally, and our hearts are inflamed with love for him, we will be able to practice these virtues so much more easily than if not. And these virtues will help us in the storms of our life and in our sufferings and our trials. And sometimes those trials will be in practicing these virtues. So we got to pray for the graces to be able to live them out. And tell people, tell friends, if you're struggling with these, tell your confessor, tell friends, be open and honest about it. Everybody struggles with these at some point in their lives. You are not the only person who has ever struggled with, being chaste or being obedient or anything like that. Quite the contrary. We're all sinners struggling in these areas, and we all need each other, to boost each other up and to recognize that we're not alone and that, we can do this. With God's help, we can live these virtues out, and they're good virtues. So I will leave it there today, Catholic pilgrims. Tomorrow, I will see you back. I hope so. And I'm looking forward to moving back into more of her writing. So look forward to that. And until next time, Catholic pilgrims, live the faith boldly and travel well.